Hello, and welcome to the second episode of HIV Justice Live, where we highlight the work that we and others are doing to advocate against HIV criminalisation and meet fellow activists and allies. Today, we'll be introducing you to a key advocacy tool, the Global HIV Criminalisation Database. We'll show you how it works, how we keep it up to date, learn about its history, and hear about how others have been using it. So let's meet my guests on the show today. Sylvie Beaumont will explain how we gather and maintain the content of the database. I'll be talking with Julian about the database's history and development. Sasha Volgina will tell us how she's been using the database for advocacy. And we'll meet HJN's Global Advisory Panel member, Jules Kim. So today's show is called The Evidence for Evidence, but what does that mean exactly? Well, we're going behind the scenes to reveal how we gather the evidence for our Global HIV Criminalisation Database so that you can learn what's going on and use it as evidence in your advocacy. For example, you can use it to see which groups or populations are being disproportionately arrested, whether the criminal justice system is treating people living with HIV fairly and justly. Spoiler alert, it's not. What types of laws are being used and where, and to connect with like-minded organizations. But before we meet my guests, let's take a quick tour of the database.
The Global HIV Criminalisation Database is located on HJN's website, hivjustice.net. It comprises 3 sections: laws and analyses, cases, and organizations. An overview page introduces the content of the 3 sections and provides a global overview of the available data on a clickable map. Clicking on the text in the pop-up boxes gets you directly to the respective pages. Alternatively, you can go to each section via the main navigation. Laws and Analyses lists known HIV criminalization laws by jurisdiction. It includes a brief overview of how laws have been used, a summary of significant advocacy related to the laws and their use, and, where available, links to the full text of the laws. The interactive map at the bottom of the Laws and Analyses start page lets you visualize which countries and jurisdictions use which kinds of laws in the context of HIV criminalization. The second section is Cases. It provides search tools to access HIV criminalization case reports recorded in the Global HIV Criminalisation Database. You can search by keywords, by country, and/or by category, and you can limit search results to specific timeframes. At the bottom of the Cases search page, an interactive map lets you visualize by category where we have found case reports for that category. Finally, the third section, Organizations, is a directory of organizations from around the world that are actively working against HIV criminalization and also other intersectional forms of criminalization. The directory only includes organizations that have opted in by asking to be included in the directory. If your organization is not listed and you would like to be included, please fill in this form on the website. The Global HIV Criminalisation Database, one of the many advocacy tools available on the website of the HIV Justice Network.
So now I'd like to welcome Sylvie Beaumont. Sylvie is the HIV Justice Network's Research and Outreach Coordinator. Sylvie joined our team in 2016, and as well as working on the database, she also curates the news and puts it all together in our HIV Justice Weekly newsletter. Sylvie also oversees all of our translations and keeps us all connected via our listservs. Hello, Sylvie.
Hello, Edwin.
Hi. So, Sylvie, tell me a little bit about what your daily work means, the kind of work you do monitoring cases. What does it involve?
Well, I start the day pretty much in the same way every day. I start by checking my email, and we run about 6 Google alerts in 4 languages. So that's 24 alerts altogether. That's in French, Spanish, English, and Russian. I also check emails from our regional partners because they do send us information on cases. For example, in the ICA region, we've got the Eurasian Women Network who helps us identify new cases of criminalization. We've got partners everywhere. We've got organization individuals who contact us. So the first part of my day is really to check emails. Once this is done and the cases have been identified, the first thing is obviously to translate them into English when they come from another country. I then strip off any kind of identifying things like names of the people who are being accused or prosecuted, the addresses, which are often mentioned, particularly in the US. If the language is really stigmatizing, because a lot of the information we get is from the press, and I will try to do a search to see if I can find something slightly less horrible that I can upload in the database, because we're actually using the exact text from what we get from the press or partners. We don't change anything. Then once all of this is done, we and put the data in the database. I tag it. We have all kind of tag categories. Does this relate to sex workers? Is it a migrant? Where is it? What country? Where is the prosecution? Is it just a reporting? Have they been charged? Has the trial started? Have they been sentenced? All that kind of thing. So it's quite a long process.
It is, and you do that every day, which I really appreciate. So could you give us an idea of the extent of the database? How many cases do we actually have, and how far do we go back?
We've got just over 1,000 cases. The first one, I think, was from 1995, if I remember correctly. Some of the casing have multiple entries because we if we can, we follow the cases from the beginning, from the time where they've been reported all the way to, appeal at the highest court if the case goes all the way there. So, it's a lot of, it's over 1,000 entries, but a lot of them have actually the historic of the case. So it's quite a bit.
Yeah, and the reality is that those are just the tip of the iceberg. We can only ever record cases that we know about, and there are many, many thousands of cases, including arrests and investigations that we actually don't know about. But in the database, we also have data about every country. So how many countries do we have laws and analyses for?
At present, we have about 145, I think, countries where we have all the laws that have been used for prosecution, so whether they're HIV-specific laws or general, penal code laws. And we're currently, I think, identifying the rest, what's missing, which I think is about 50 countries, give or take. And I'm pretty confident that by the end of the year, we will have every country's listed, with maybe 1 or 2 gaps in the MENA region, but we're working on actually changing that.
Indeed. It's been a huge undertaking,
Yes.
And we are very close to being complete, which is wonderful. And part of that is because of the many networks and organizations that we work with. How many organizations do we actually have in the database?
We've got almost 200 organizations. As it's been said before, they're all organizations that have actually asked us to be in the database. And they are generally organizations that either works on HIV criminalization or other intersecting forms of criminalization. So, there are sex workers organization, migrant organization, that kind of things. So it's quite extensive, but yeah, I would always like to have more. So please do contact us.
Because as outreach coordinator, you also keep in touch with our partners and colleagues from all over the world.
Yes.
And I guess you also hear who's actually using the database and how it's being used.
Yes, I mean it's quite a wide variety of people. Actually, we get researchers who are writing reports, or so they want to know how many I don't know, like say sex workers, migrants have been prosecuted for HIV exposure. That's between this date and that date, and in which country. We get advocates who want to know if there has been successful advocacy in other countries. So, for example, there is currently, I think, a Kenya constitutional challenge that's going on, and the people there contacted us because they knew that there had been a successful challenge in Colombia. So, we were able to pass on information, get the court decision translated, and all that kind of stuff. So it's there's a lot of different people who are using it for all kind of reason, and because people know that we're there. We also get organizations that ask for information on other type of criminalization, and we can refer them on to the right channels.
Yeah, and also, as we saw in the demo, those visualization maps. So I use them for my presentations when I want to give a visual overview of how many countries have or use HIV-specific criminal laws. I can quickly create a world map highlighting those countries and screenshot it and use it in a PowerPoint slide. And so anyone who's watching, you're welcome to do so too, but please mention our website as well as the date that you took the screenshot, and of course credit us. So we're also aware that the data are never complete, as Sylvie said, and cases can only ever be considered to be the tip of the iceberg because so many arrests and convictions can go unreported. And we also know that a wide range of laws can be used to target people living with HIV, some of which we haven't yet captured. And we're really grateful to the many individuals and organizations for supporting us in researching all of these laws, especially the Australian law firm Hall & Wilcox, the Amsterdam-based international law firm Dentons, the US Center for HIV Law and Policy, and UNAIDS. It's a big job keeping it up to date and filling all the gaps, isn't it, Sylvie?
Yes, it's a never-ending job, really, because there is cases coming. There are cases coming every day. The laws are amended, the law is hopefully repealed, and all that kind of thing. So yes, it's a big job.
And how can people get in touch if they want to tell us about things that we don't know about yet?
Well, they can contact us at the email info@hivjustice.net, and then just tell us immediately, and I'll get in touch with them and get as much information as possible. So please do, because it's really important.
And the same with the organizations on the directories, as you saw in the demo.
Yes. Yes.
So every day you're monitoring these cases, and I used to do this every day for about 8 years before you joined the HIV Justice Network, and I know that reading about people living with HIV who face such terrible injustices can have its toll. How does that affect you?
It's quite hard sometimes to read. I mean, what I get really upset about is it's the language that that I get to read every day in the newspaper, and it's a bit like things haven't changed. It's the HIV monster, the HIV is spitting. I mean, the level of ignorance is quite staggering, really. And what I find really upsetting is that it's the science hasn't really, they haven't really caught on the science, and and you find that again in the court as well. When, I mean, like recently, last year, there was a case in Texas where a man was sentenced to 12 years in jail for spitting at a police officer. Now, when you bear in mind that, you cannot get HIV from spitting, and there's never been a case of HIV transmission by spitting, since the beginning of the epidemics. I mean, it is quite staggering that, the court still sentence people for things with, anyway, it really annoys me. And I've also read, I mean, there's also law in New Zealand, again, around spitting, where a prison officer have to test every 3 months for 12 years if somebody has spotted them, which is, plainly totally ridiculous. So it's not a good thing, but I have to do it, and hopefully, I know that we make a difference. So that's all we can do with it.
It's true. We do, Sylvie. I mean, we don't just collect the data for monitoring. We do this to be hopefully an early warning system. And, thanks to funding from the Robert Carr Fund and the linkages that we've made in our global networks, it means that we can sometimes make the difference when we're aware of things in a timely manner. So you recall from the demo that example of that recent breastfeeding case in Zimbabwe just a few weeks ago. Well, after Sylvie found the news report, I contacted SALC, the Southern Africa Litigation Centre, one of our partners in Southern Africa, and they're now providing technical support to her defence lawyer to ensure that she gets the best possible representation. So we are making a difference.
Well, that's what really makes the job worthwhile, is to know that the reporting and the monitoring really is helping to make a difference, and obviously this is the first step on the long road to stopping the criminalization of HIV. So
indeed, we have a long way to go. Yeah, yes. Thanks, Sylvie. Thanks so much for now. So we'll see you later again for the Q&A segment. And if any of you watching us live on Facebook have any questions or comments for Sylvie about her work on the Global HIV Criminalisation Database, please put them in the comments below the live video. And our colleague, Julian Howes, will put some of these questions to her later in the show. But for now, thank you so much, Sylvie.
Thank you.
So I've just mentioned his name. Julian Howes not only coordinates the HIV Justice Network's Global Advisory Panel, he's also a pioneer in so many ways. For example, during his time with the Global Network of People Living with HIV, he helped create both the PLHIV Stigma Index and what became the Global HIV Criminalisation Scan. So here to talk about the history of this crucial community-led and owned monitoring work, it's Julian Howes.
Hi, Edwin. Bonus to see you.
Hello. So, Julian, you've been involved with that community-led and owned research on HIV criminalisation long before we launched the Global HIV Criminalisation Database. So let's talk about the history. It all began, with a European scan, didn't it?
It began in 2003, 2004, when we were at a meeting in the Netherlands, which was just going to be looking at 7 or 8 countries, and we thought, Lisa Power and I, who was working for THT at the time, thought, well, why 7 or 8 countries? This is just the tip of an iceberg. Let's see how wide and big and deep and heavy this iceberg is. So we actually did all 53 countries with the help of the wonderful Susan Timberlake and Miriam Malua at UNAIDS, who gave us a small amount of money to do the research.
Yeah, in fact, Lisa, who you mentioned, is now the chair of the HIV Justice Network Supervisory Board. So we all go quite a long way back. And I remember you had the report, I think the draft came out in 2005. And I remember meeting you not long before you presented that data on the world stage at the 2008 International AIDS Conference in Mexico City.
That's right, yes. Sex, lies and prosecutions. Yes, it was the first time it had been done. It was a very interesting thing to do. I think it started the process, which has now ended up with the fabulous HIV Justice Network, all singing and all dancing version, which is global.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's a long way from there to here. I mean, in 2008, that was also when Edwin Cameron, his plenary in Mexico City, called for a global network, sort of, to advocate against HIV criminalization. And and here we are doing it. But 2 years later, I remember at the Vienna conference in 2010, that was when GMP Plus's Global Criminalization Scan report was launched, and that was when there was really that concerted effort. It incorporated data from my blog that I'd been blogging for a number of years, and you brought me in to the global world, to the world of GMP Plus, which I'm forever grateful.
Well, no, I mean to say, it was an open door as far as you were concerned. The work that you were on the blog, the fabulous writing skills, the fact that you'd been doing all that treatment work was so starting to make the link between the science and criminalization, and how stupid some criminalization was actually happening. And of course, at the time in 2010, that's when Mona Nyambi from Zambia was also working with GMP and was heralding the global version of the scan. So I think it was a fortuitous meeting of everything that started to get it onto the next stage.
Indeed, and for a number of years, GMP Plus kept the scan updated and broadened it somewhat. But one of the things that we realized was just how hard it was to keep it updated. And it was such a huge amount of work, I know, for you and your colleagues.
No, absolutely. And it was also a very static thing. And I think that, with all of these things, does one do it in the way where one researches it once, waits for 2 years, puts it into a nice report, which then goes up on a shelf, or do you try and make something which is continually evolving and and become something that is live with the best possible information that you have at the time, rather than waiting for forever until it's absolutely perfect, because things ain't actually perfect, ever actually perfect, and activism actually requires that you've got to do things now rather than wait for later. And that is what's so wonderful about the interactive, the interactivity that you've actually put upon it now.
Yeah, I mean, we're very grateful that GMP Plus has entrusted us to be the guardians of this data, and we're very happy that we're now able to update it in real time, and it is making a difference. But we have come a long way since we first met, haven't we, Julian?
Absolutely. We've got a long way to go, I'm sure.
We do. So before we hear from a current GMP Plus staff member, someone who has been contributing to our understanding of what's going on in the ecoregion, as well as using the database for some impressive advocacy, I'd like to introduce a new element in our show that Julian's also involved with, Mind the Gap. So the GAP is the HIV Justice Network's Global Advisory Panel, a really amazing group of international experts who are leaders in the HIV response. And Julian, you're coordinating the GAP. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, I mean, so there you've got, 15 odd faces from around the world who effectively advise HJN as a sounding board, as a critical friend, sometimes from quite outside the HIV field, but from the field of, more generally human rights, from sex work, from drug issues, from youth issues. So I think that once again is both a great input, a reality check, a critical friend, but also a great amount of support. I recommend it to any organisation.
And yeah, you've been doing such a great job by coordinating the GAP, and I love how engaged they've been since they were formed at the beginning of the year, and I'm really grateful to them and to you. In our new video series, Mind the Gap, you're going to get to know a little bit more about our esteemed GAP members, some of which might surprise you. And also, here's something that might surprise some of you about Julian. Amongst the many things Julian has been and done in his colourful past, he was a pioneering LGBT activist who in 1978 took the London Underground to task for its sexist dress code policy with a rather unique gender protest, as you can see here. So, ladies and gentlemen, please mind the gap.
Welcome to Mind the Gap. And what's your name?
Jules Kim.
And what are your pronouns, Jules?
She, her.
And where in the world are you?
Sydney, Australia.
And what do you do there?
I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Scarlet Alliance, Australian Sex Workers Association, and an active sex worker.
Great. And what are your activities around HIV criminalisation?
We do advocacy, representation, provide support, as well as challenge stigmatising media and bad policies and laws.
Wonderful. Why did you decide to become a member of HIV Justice Network's Global Advisory Panel?
Because I've always admired the work of HJN, and it's really exciting to be part of it.
So we asked you to bring along a photo that meant something to you. What's going on here, Jules?
So this was taken at the International Congress on AIDS in the Asia Pacific in Bangkok, Thailand. And this is when a group of sex workers from across the Asia Pacific region stormed the main stage. And we wanted to tell the conference about the impact of criminal laws on sex workers, access to HIV prevention, treatment and care, and the need to decriminalise sex work and recognise that sex work is work.
Right. And what do the 3 zeros mean?
Well, we all know about the 3 zeros, but the third zero, zero discrimination, rarely gets much attention or action. And this was about the fact that as sex workers and people living with HIV, we were demanding action on the third zero.
And now for some final questions, Jules. When was the last time you were really proud of yourself?
When sex work became fully decriminalised in the NT late last year. That was the sex worker-led campaign, making us only the 3rd place in the world to have a form of decriminalisation of sex work.
Fantabulous. How do you keep yourself sane in this COVID pandemic?
Well, I question the notion of sanity, endless Zoom meetings, the usual fun stuff.
Okay, and now finally, tell us something about yourself that nobody in the HIV sector knows.
Well, when I'm not being a CEO or activist or a sex worker, my other hat is as a musician. And you can see me playing bass there in the picture at a street festival.
Thank you, Jules Kim, rock chick, and also CEO of the Scarlet Alliance. Thanks ever so much.
Thank you so much.
It's our new video series, Mind the Gap, with Jules Kim and Julian Howes. Julian's now back monitoring your questions and comments on Facebook. Whatever you post there, we'll try to respond live in just a little while. So in today's HIV Justice Live, we're taking a closer look at our Global HIV Criminalisation Database, which can be found on HGN's website, hivjustice.net. We've already heard about its history and how it's managed behind the scenes. Now let's hear from someone who's not only been helping us with the data, but has also been using the database for advocacy. Sasha Volgina is Program Manager at the Global Network of People Living with HIV, GMP+. Welcome, Sasha.
Hello, good evening.
So Sasha, tell us a little bit about what you do at GMP+.
Well, for decriminalization, I'm actually leading the work on the global level, but also I'm very focused on my own region, working together with the Eurasian Network of Women Living with HIV, and we are working in quite a lot of countries in the ACA region. And of course, that's because the region is on the fire. We have a lot of criminalization cases, and this is not easy. And basically, I think that this is some kind of obligation from the side of the people in HIV networks, to do that work around the criminalization.
Yeah, and I so appreciate your passion in this work. Because I know when I presented the database to all your colleagues at GMP+, you were really excited. What is it that you like about it?
Well, I think that it gives us quite a good understanding of what is going on. So it's important for us to see the trends, for example. We can see, who are these people? For example, that the most criminalized populations when the law was used in Belarus were people who were using drugs. Then now we have more and more cases in the Central Asia, and we see that that's about women or about LGBT community, which is quite important for advocacy. or we were able, for example, to understand that though the proportion of people convicted, men and women, is the same, but then those who go to prison are only women, which gives us quite a good argument, because usually the justification of the criminalization law is that it should protect women. But what we see is actually that women are those who are most suffering from that law. So that's also helped us, to build that advocacy argument.
And what kind of I mean, you've been quite successful having some incremental success in your region with advocacy. Can you just highlight a couple of areas where it's been successful?
Right. Well, I think Belarus is one of the best examples. I hope some more are coming. I hope Moldova and Ukraine will also change the law. The law is very old in my region. It's just, the old Soviet law. It's all the same, basically, for all the countries. And we managed to change, not fully remove the law, let's be clear, just remove one part of it. And that's also very important. When we look at this database, we can see what are the changes. Because yes, the law is still there, right? But you can see what have changed, and then you can compare that with the cases and see measure the impact, right? And make an analysis. Okay, if we're changing the law, we managed to advocate it and to change it, have it reduce the cases? How many cases were reduced? Like what's going on on the ground, which is also quite important. But Belarus, yeah, that was a great struggle. I still hope we will be able to reduce it fully. But we at least were able to take one part of the law, so that the number of cases is much less rather than we had just a couple of years ago. And I also think that one of the very important, and that's also what is provided with the database, is this understanding and awareness among the communities themselves. Right. Because the problem is that people sometimes, when we started to work around criminalization in ESA region, quite a lot of great activists were basically not aware that it still exists. So just showing that cases, showing that it is there, showing the analysis of the law is quite important for activists themselves and for encouraging the advocacy from their side. And it's much easier. I see now that when this year, there was unfortunately a breakout of cases in Uzbekistan. But already it was quite, like people know where to go to us, right? What to do. We reacted very quickly. So it's much more doable rather than it was like several years ago, when the level of awareness was very low. The reaction mechanism of advocacy from the side of the community was not so developed as it is now. I think we're in a much better position now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things that I'm really proud of, is that we've been able to sort of create this a real-time monitoring, so that the data is updated in real time, that we connect with advocates as things are happening, and also to be able to compare and potentially shame neighboring countries. It's like, actually, look, this law has changed. Your law is completely out of step with your other countries. Obviously, nearly all laws are out of step with UNAIDS and Global Commission recommendations, but we have a long way to go there. But I think this comparative analysis, and also what you're saying, legal literacy, making sure that actually the advocates understand what is actually happening in their own country and in their own region. Right.
The one small thing I also wanted to add is about the journalists, because Sylvie was speaking about when you are gathering the data or you are reading the cases, it's always very hard even to read, being honest. Yeah. Like it's really horrible language and horrible, like stigma and discrimination is in every word. So that's also helped us scanning all that cases and gathering them together to understand what are the tendencies and try to come up with some solutions. So we're having a competition in my region for the best articles from journalists and from activists annually, and we're providing some prizes for people who are doing that in a better way, like putting the best examples, how you actually should be writing about criminalization. to make something opposite to the way how usually media is covering that.
Yeah, that was such a fantastic idea to have that competition. And of course, we also have our media toolkit that's available in all 4 languages, making media work for HIV justice, that is aimed exactly at activists to help them understand how to work with media and to teach them how to report, not just on HIV criminalization, but on HIV in all of its aspects in a non-stigmatizing way. But that competition is just fantastic, and I hope that we're actually able to learn from what was done in your region and replicate that globally. But for now, I so appreciate everything you do, Sasha. But for now, thank you very much. But I'd like to welcome back our Research and Outreach Coordinator, Sylvie Beaumont, and our Global Advisory Panel Coordinator, who's today also our Facebook monitor, Julian Howes. Welcome back, everyone. So, Julian, what's been going on Facebook, if anything at all, right now?
Well, I think everybody is glued to the United States election.
Yes,
I think that is the limit of it. The elections have got to us.
Well, indeed. Obviously, we picked the date today with somewhat trepidation, but of course we're sending all of our love and support and hope to all of our friends and colleagues in the US today. Thank you for watching, whether it's now or on catch up, and really appreciate it. If you want to see this show again, it's on Facebook and YouTube. But for now, thank you to Sylvie, Julian, Sasha, and Jules. Thanks to our director, Nick, and the rest of the HGN team, not forgetting our funder, all of you for watching, and see you soon for the next HIV Justice Live.